How's it going, everybody? It's Mr. White here with your Unit 1 test review. So what you're going to need to do is get out that brown test review paper, the one that looks like this, and follow along as we go over the answers from the Unit 1 test review. Make sure you study these notes so that you can do well on the tests. So here we go. First thing you need to know is some basic vocabulary, okay? First word you need to know is economics. Economics simply means the study of how people make choices with their scarce resources. It's important to remember that economics is really all about the study of choices. Now, the difference between shortage and scarcity. I know they sound like the same thing, but they're not. Remember that a shortage is when demand is greater than supply. Now, we're going to learn a lot more about supply and demand in Unit 2, but it's important to remember that anytime people are demanding more of a good or service than is available, that is the condition that we call a shortage. This is different from the condition of scarcity. Shortages don't always exist, but scarcity always exists. Remember that scarcity means that there's not an unlimited supply of any resource, and so that's why we have to make choices with our resources. Next up, the difference between goods and services. As a high school student, I really shouldn't have to explain this to you, but remember that a good means a physical product that you can buy, whereas a service is something you do for somebody. Opportunity cost. Now, this is an area where some people get confused. Remember that opportunity cost means the value of all the things that you sacrifice when you make a choice to do one activity over another activity. Simply put, remember that opportunity cost is what you have to give up to get something. Just remember that. Now, trade-offs. Trade-offs are all the various options you have when you're faced with a choice. You might have a choice between buying a pair of shoes or a hoodie or some jeans, kind of like in the notes that we saw. And remember that all three of those represent your trade-offs. And when you choose one trade-off over the others, that's when you incur opportunity cost. Last of all, the difference between human capital and physical capital. Physical capital means man-made tools that can be used to create a good or a service. So a great example of physical capital could be something like a hammer, whereas human capital is different. Human capital means all of the knowledge, skills, or training that you receive to know how to perform a good, to know how to create a good or perform a service. Yeah, it helps when I say it the right way. Okay. Now, the 4 factors of production. Remember, the first factor of production is capital. Capital, like we just said, could be either human capital or physical capital. It's important to remember that physical capital means tools, like this forklift here. But human capital means knowledge, training, and skills. So the whole reason why you all are in high school is because you're trying to build up your human capital, right? So education. Maybe one day you'll even go on to get a college education and build even more human capital. The E in our 4 factors of production, because remember it's CELL, that's how you can remember this, C-E-L-L. The E in CELL is entrepreneurship. It's important to remember that entrepreneurship means business leaders who combine the factors of production to create goods and services. Like, for example, Oprah. If you guys don't know, Oprah has her own TV channel, she has her own TV shows, she has her own publishing company that makes magazines and all kinds of things. So she started off with very little, and she combined factors of production to make products and services that people want to buy. So that's why Oprah is considered an entrepreneur. And it doesn't hurt to be an entrepreneur. Oprah's pretty rich today. Now, the third thing, the first L in CELL, is land. It's important to remember that in economics, land doesn't just mean flat ground. Land means natural resources. So any kind of resource that comes from nature is going to fall into the category of land. Last up, we've got labor. Labor means workers who produce goods and services. So like a cashier at Walmart. A cashier at Walmart is a perfect example of the final factor of production, which is labor. Easy stuff. All right, now it's a little bit more complicated with the production possibilities curve. Hopefully you remember that a production possibilities curve is a graphical way to illustrate opportunity costs. So let's start off by looking at this particular production possibility curve that's in your test review. I've got a close approximation here on the screen. It's not exactly like the one in your test review, but that's okay. So the first thing you want to know is what's occurring at point G, okay? Point G is right here in case you don't see it. Hopefully everybody remembers that when you see a point like point G, that's what we call unattainable. Unattainable simply means that there's no way we can get there with the given resources that we have. Obviously, we only have a certain amount of resources to create bicycles or computers, and point G represents a mixture of resources that we simply can't get. Okay? Now, what's occurring at point F. Here's point F. Okay, it's inside the curve. Any point to the inside of the curve is inefficient. Remember that inefficient means that, sure, you could produce at point F, you have enough resources, but the problem with point F is that you're going to waste a lot of resources. You can see that we could potentially create more bicycles and more computers, but for some reason at point F we're not. And so that's why point F is inefficient. If there is movement from point D to point C, like that, what would be our opportunity cost? Well, if we look at point D is roughly at 6 and maybe 8. Point C is roughly at point 4, is at 4 and 12. Okay, so what we want to do is identify the number that got smaller. If it was computers that got smaller, which it looks like in this example it is, computers got smaller, we're going to try to identify how much smaller the number of computers got. So if we went from 6 to 4, I know this is complicated math, y'all, but 6 minus 4 is 2. Okay, so let's just take a look here, just make sure the opportunity cost is 2 computers. Now, at what point is the economy operating efficiently by producing 12 bikes and 4 computers? I think on your test review it says something a little different, but that's okay, just go with it. All right, so at what point is the economy efficient? Well, it looks like we're efficient at point C, because if you look here at point C, that's where we've got 12 bikes and 4 computers. And remember that anytime you're located actually on this curved line, that's what we call efficient. So in this particular example, A, B, C, D, and E are all efficient points of production. Now, what would cause our production possibilities curve to shift out to the left? Remember, shifting to the left would look something like this. So what would cause us to move into the left? Well, if we lost factors of production. For example, if there was a hurricane or a big earthquake, it might destroy our factories, kill some of our workers, and basically make it impossible to produce things. When that happens, our production possibility curve shrinks in and gets smaller. So remember that anytime we move to the left, that's always a decrease. So obviously, if a decrease is to the left, oh, there's the bell, an increase is out here to the right. So what would cause our production possibilities to shift out to the right? The opposite of what would cause it to shift to the left. We can gain more factors of production. So perhaps if more workers move into our town, or if we get more natural resources or more machines, that would actually cause our production possibilities to expand. And so it's going to grow to the right. One other thing that could cause us to get to point G, or to expand our production possibilities out to the right, would also be new technology. So remember, the thing that causes our production possibilities to grow is new technology or more factors of production. Shrinking would be caused by losing technology or losing factors of production. All right, here we go, moving on. Now, a budget schedule is another way that we can show the same kind of information that we would see on a production possibilities curve. So if you ever see a budget schedule like this one, all you got to do is just look at it and read it. I think it's really easy to interpret. So our budget is $60. We want to buy pizzas and tacos. Pizzas cost $6 each, tacos cost $2 each. Obviously, we can't get an unlimited supply of pizzas and tacos because we have a scarce amount of money, only $60. So if we were to purchase 8 pizzas, how many tacos can we get? All you need to do is look where it says 8 pizzas right there, and just look at how many tacos corresponds with 8 pizzas. It looks like 6 tacos. Pretty simple stuff. Can you purchase 9 pizzas and 12 tacos? Well, the answer is no. Because if you look at 12 tacos, you'll see that 12 tacos only goes with 6 pizzas. Okay? Or if you see 9 pizzas, you can see that 9 pizzas only goes with 3 tacos. So in this situation, that wouldn't work. We can't get to 9 pizzas and 12 tacos because this will exceed our budget. We don't have that many resources, so this is what we would call unattainable. Now, if we were to purchase 30 tacos, how many pizzas can we get? Well, let's look down here at 30 tacos. Look right across at pizzas. We see that the answer is 0 pizzas. If you get 30 tacos, all you're going to be eating is tacos. And what kind of graph could we use to display this? Pretty simple stuff, guys. The only graph we've studied so far, a production possibilities curve. All right, moving on. Now, remember that every society has to answer 3 basic economic questions, precisely because resources are scarce. So The three economic questions that every society has to answer is, first of all, what should we be producing? Okay, what should we make? When you look at the resources you have to make tough decisions about what would be the best use of those resources. Once you've decided what you want to use your resources for, then the next thing is you got to decide how you're going to produce that thing that you want to produce. What's the best way to make it? And then the last thing we have to decide is, once we've made stuff, who gets it? So once we've produced all the things we want to produce, we have to have a mechanism for distributing those things. And so all together, these are the three basic economic questions. What to make, how to make it, and who gets it. Remember that the way a society answers those questions tells us what kind of economic system they have. Speaking of economic systems, let's talk about it. The first kind of economic system, and probably the most important one you need to know about, is the free market or market economy. It's also known as capitalism or free enterprise. This is the kind of system where individuals are free to own the factors of production, the land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship. And they can answer those three economic questions with the factors of production. They can decide what to make, how to make it, and who gets it. Now, this is done with little or no government involvement. So, a perfect example of a country that has this type of economic system would be the United States. Even though there is a little bit of government involvement, the majority of our businesses are run by individuals. It's what we call the private sector. And for that reason, that's why we think of the United States as a free market economy. Now, the guy who came up with capitalism or a market economy was named Adam Smith. Hopefully you remember that Adam Smith had a theory. He called it the invisible hand theory. This doesn't mean that he thought that his hand could turn invisible. What he thought was that instead of having the government decide what happens in the economy, like letting the king direct the economy with his hand, that instead the people should be allowed to decide what happens in the economy based on their own self-interest. I think I told you all in class that one of the most famous quotes from Adam Smith is, he said, "It is not from the benevolence of the butcher or the baker or the brewer that we expect our dinner, but rather from their own regard to their narrow self-interests." What that means is that we don't expect people to make stuff in our economy because they love us and they want to do it out of the goodness of their heart. We expect people to make stuff for us in the economy because we're going to pay for it. And when we pay for stuff, it makes them better off. So the butcher and the baker and the brewer are only making our dinner because we're paying them for it. And that makes them better off. But in the long run, it makes us better off too because we get to eat. And so Adam Smith said the economy will always be efficient and it'll always basically manage itself if we allow the invisible hand of the people's self-interest to govern economic activity. All right. Now, the next kind of economic system you need to know about is a command economy. This was created as a response to free enterprise by a guy named Karl Marx. Hopefully you remember Karl Marx didn't have a very good opinion of free enterprise. He thought that it took advantage of workers, and even though it was a very efficient system, Marx worried that it wasn't a very equitable system. Hopefully you remember the difference between efficiency and equity. Well, Marx thought a more fair system would be a system where the government or some other body that was chosen by the people could control the factors of production and decide how to answer the economic questions. Once they answered the economic questions, they could divide up the things that were produced evenly, and everybody in the society would benefit. Of course, we know there's some problems with this system. It doesn't always work that way in real life because, of course, there's this little thing out there called greed. And unfortunately, greed tends to mess up this equity that Karl Marx was hoping would happen when communism was implemented. So a good example of a command economy or a communist economy is North Korea. Now, the last kind of economy, or actually I should say the third kind of economy, we know there's another kind, but we'll get there in a minute. The last kind that you really need to know for the test is what's called socialist or a mixed economy. Remember that socialism is a kind of system where both individuals and the government are allowed to own the factors of production and answer the three basic economic questions of what to make, how to make it, and who gets it. Socialism is essentially what every country in the world practices today, but some countries are closer to the market side of the economic spectrum, where the majority of decisions are made by the private sector. Other countries that practice socialism are more on the communism side of the spectrum, where they let the government answer all the economic questions. And some are kind of right smack dab in the middle. So a good example of a country that's kind of right smack dab in the middle would be China. Now, The last kind of economy, you really don't need to know about it, but whatever, it's there. So traditional economy. Remember that a traditional economy is where custom and tradition determines what is produced, how it's produced, and who gets it. So it'd be like the Native American tribes, or maybe people who lived thousands of years ago during the caveman times, the Stone Age, right? I sound pretty uneducated when I say that. Please excuse me. It's kind of late in the day. Here we go. Moving on. All right. Circular flow model. This is something that we did in class when we played the Econo game. I really hope y'all remember the Econo game. Just in case you forgot, here's the circular flow model. Remember that in the circular flow model, we have two basic groups. We've got households, right here, and we've got businesses, right here. Okay. Now, remember that the purpose for households is to sell their resources to the businesses so they can earn money and buy products. For businesses, their goal is to buy resources from the households, create products, and then sell those products to the households again. This is how our free market economy functions. So it's important to remember that the first part is the factor or resource market. In the factor market or the resource market, the households are selling the factors of production. That's why it's called the factor market. And they get income from the businesses who are buying the factors of production. Okay? Now, once the businesses get the factors of production, they're going to create goods and services. Those goods and services can then be sold back to the households to make a profit. So remember that in this product market, it's the businesses who are selling products and it's the households who are buying the products. So it's important that you can remember how the circular flow model works. It's important to remember the different components of the circular flow model. And I would even recommend drawing it out and making sure that you could label a circular flow model if you were given one on the test. Who knows, maybe you'll see one on the test. Okay? So it's important to remember the circular flow model is just a graphical representation of the interaction between businesses and households in a market economy. Now, short answer section. It's the last part you're going to have to deal with. This is going to be worth 10 points of your overall test grade. So you definitely don't want to leave the short answer blank. You're going to have one question with 5 different steps. Now, you'll see on your test review that it tells you what questions I'm going to ask. Honestly, guys, it doesn't get any easier than this. You'll have plenty of time to sit at home and think about it. You could even draw out your short answer and show it to me on Tuesday, and I wouldn't even mind taking a look at it and telling you if you're on the right track. But I'm not going to tell you what to do in this review video, but what I will tell you is how much each part is going to be worth. So what you're going to have to do for your short answers, you're going to have to create a production possibilities frontier, and you're going to label all the different parts of the frontier based on what I tell you. The first thing you'll do is you'll draw the frontier, and that's going to be worth 4 points. So making sure that you draw it exactly right with an X and Y axis, a curved possibility frontier, production possibility frontier, and labels for all the points on your production possibilities frontier. That's worth 4 points. The next part is you need to show an efficient level of production. Hopefully you remember what efficiency looks like on a production possibilities frontier. Pretty easy stuff. You're going to label that point A. That's worth 2 points. Then you're going to show an inefficient level of production and call that point B. Once again, is worth 2 points. And then the last thing you're going to have to do is show what it would look like if there was an increase in the factors of production in Econoland. So you'll have to draw something on your production possibilities curve to show what that would look like, and that's also going to be worth 2 points. So altogether, you can see it's worth 10 points. And please, please make sure you do this because, like I said, it's super easy, guys. There's no reason why everybody shouldn't get this one. That's it for your Unit 1 test review. Please make sure you study over your notes, study over this review, and come to class prepared to make a great grade on the test. Good luck, guys. See you next time.